It was the great Epictetus that told us, you become what you worship. The ability for us to be able to ascertain what we're worshiping, how we're worshiping, and what we will therefore become is crucial to understand. And the best place to look at this is to the ancient Jewish priest, judge, and leader of the nation of Israel, Samuel. We'll take a look at the list of things he tells his people to do in order to find their purpose, to become the people that they were called to be. And hopefully you'll be able to ascertain what you are called to be and how you will get there. 1 Samuel chapter 7 is where this Jewish priest, prophet, judge creates the formula for finding purpose, for finding reason, to finding the potential trajectory of one's life. And he does this through the people of Israel. If you are an Israelite, this is now 3,000 years ago, you understand the history of Israelites. And of course, Israel is named after the person Israel. And the person Israel was renamed to be Israel. His original name was Jacob. And Jacob is the ancient biblical character that not only the Jews, but also the Muslims and the Christians follow, and they give assent and respect to. Jacob becomes Israel in Genesis. And if you're to understand the people of Israel, you must understand the man Israel and how those are interrelated, how they're connected, how the pursuit by Jacob to find his purpose is the corollary to the pursuit of the people of Israel to find their purpose hundreds of years later. And so it's helpful to understand what are the essential stories of the Jewish people. Now, me not being a Jew, I don't really get this. So it takes a lot of study, and I really highly recommend The History of the Jews, which is I think it's a 10-volume set by Gates, Gaetz, and it's very, very helpful for understanding the narrative and the oral history of the Jewish people. So I rely on that quite a bit. If you remember, Jacob was sent away from his home to his mother's brother's home, Laban, to go find a wife. And he identifies a woman he loves, this woman named Rachel. And so he goes to her father, Laban, and says, I will do anything to marry your daughter. And Laban says, okay, work for me for 7 years, and I will give you to her. And as is commonly done on the great reality TV shows of today, bride approaches, he marries her, lifts up the veil, and realizes, oh, it's not the daughter that I thought. I did not specify which daughter I would be getting. And of course, Laban deceived him into working for 7 years. And so he re-ups for another 7 years and clarifies that he will indeed marry the woman Rachel, not the original Leah, the woman Rachel who he actually loves. And so Laban has him work for another 7 years, and Jacob works for 7 years and is finally able to marry the love of his life, Rachel. The ability for Jacob to do this is really, really interesting because he is single-mindedly focused on one woman. And once he gets her, he doesn't leave. He sticks around and helps Laban continue to build his business. You see, Jacob is very much like Joseph, that he helps build the kingdom through effective stewardship, effective business philosophy, and business strategy of his enemy, of him who enslaves him. So finally, Jacob gets wise, and he actually does a counter deceit against his father-in-law, Laban. And Jacob, in the middle of the night, functionally, he learns that Laban is now 3 days away from him. He has a chance to escape, so he gathers his wives, his children, all the herds that he had deceived Laban out of, and he makes a run for it. And Laban finds about this 3 days later. So Laban pursues him. Laban, the more powerful person, the person with a greater family, a greater power structure, pursues him. And finally, about day 7, overtakes, comes and stops Jacob from his fleeing. This is Jacob's fleet out of Egypt. So this is functionally the parallel of Israel's fleeing out of Egypt. This is Israel fleeing out of the captivity of Laban. These are parallels. One of the ways that Laban says that he needs to interact with him is he says that you did not give me a chance to kiss my grandsons and my granddaughters, my daughters. I only wanted that chance. But then he also goes on a tirade looking for some household gods that he claims are missing. And Jacob knows nothing of these. And Laban just ransacks the entire camp, goes through all the tents, digs up the dirt, goes through under the blankets, looks everywhere. He comes to the horse and his daughter Rachel, his most loved, most prized Rachel. And Rachel says, Father, do not search the horse. Do not make me get down from this horse because the way of the woman is with me. And Laban assents. And of course, place where Laban is looking for his foreign idols, the one place he won't look out of respect for the person he loves most is the one place where the household idols lie, in the very satchel of Rachel. So Laban apologizes, essentially. They make a pact there. They set up an Ebenezer stone in this place that's very close to an area called Mizpah. Now, there are multiple mitzvahs, there's multiple Ebenezers in the Jewish text. So we have to understand that these places are parallels, but they're not always the exact same place. Laban and Jacob sit up a stone, and they said, let this stone be a watch post, a mitzvah between you and I, that God may watch, that neither of us will cross this line, neither of us will be enemies to one another, that we may live in peace. And they both agree, and they set off. Now Jacob, whether he knows it or not yet, has these household gods. These, not only they're gods, not only they're idols, but they're also stolen. And so he departs from there, and he knows that this next encounter is encounter the other person he deceived in his life, which was Esau. He deceived Esau out of his own birthright and deceived his own father to ascertain and obtain that birthright. So he knows he's approaching Esau. He knows Esau and he are not on good terms. It's been probably 20, 21 years since then. And so he begins sending fleets and waves of gifts, of livestock and great treasure ahead of him, just to mitigate some of the anger of his longtime nemesis Esau, his brother. And finally, after he sends almost everything he has, Jacob himself approaches Esau and they make peace. Esau invites Jacob back to their home country, their homeland, and Jacob says, you know what, I'll go over here and camp out. And the place he goes to camp out is a place called Shechem. When they're camped at Shechem, Jacob's daughter Dinah wanders into town just to meet some of the town folk, see what's there. And she's met by the son of the Lord of Shechem, who is Shechem. So the Lord of Shechem is not Shechem, it's his son. That tells you a little bit about this person, about how grandiose the son of the Lord of Shechem really is. And he violently rapes her and publicly rapes her. And the brothers of Dinah, the sons of Jacob, find out about this. And they're furious. And they deceive the town of Shechem and slaughter all of the men of the village and take for themselves all the goods, all the treasures, and all the livestock of Shechem. They deceived again to obtain something that was stolen. And Jacob realizing that there's a curse upon him, curse upon his family, and knowing that he's eventually going to be called to ascend to Bethel, the place of meeting with God. He will have this comeuppance. He will have this judgment. He will have this interface with God Almighty himself, that he must eventually go up and do that. He realizes that he must prepare to do that. And Jacob, intuitively knowing how reality itself works, said this. He says, give me your gods, give me your idols, and give me your earrings. And he buried them at the terebinth tree at Shechem. You see, we're getting ready to understand how the people of Israel reflect the person of Israel. Jacob knew that he had to bury the idols and the earrings at Shechem. And the reason why you have to bury not only the idols, but the earrings, is you have to remember that the earrings are what the people made when they were in the wilderness into a golden calf that Aaron fashioned. The earrings are what were used in Gideon's time to build an ephod and an idol that was not pleasing to Israel's holy God. And earrings are symbolic of the building blocks of idols. They are the potential idols. And of course, all that you need to build an idol is a physical material and ill will and an evil heart. And Jacob, wisely knowing that mankind already carries in himself an evil heart, said, I'm going to take the earrings off the table. I'm going to take the potential building blocks to building more idols off the table. And so he buries them at Shechem. And when he goes to Shechem, he sacrifices, he confesses, he worships, and then God gives him a new name. You shall be Israel, and he blesses Jacob there. Jacob finds his true identity, his true and purpose, his truth about himself and who he's meant to be at Bethel, at the meeting place of God. And so the entirety of human history was changed at Bethel, and he could not get there unless he first buried the idols. The idols were a curse to him. And so, reflection in that historical story, we look at the words of Samuel, Israel's judge, priest, prophet, and how those are connected to the story of the people of Israel. Samuel says that the ability for us to be able to get in a right place with our purpose, to understand our purpose and our divine calling, is conditional. First of all, the people of Israel had lost a major battle with the Philistines. The Philistines had just overtaken them in chapter 4 of 1 Samuel. The Israelites thought that they could bring the Ark of God into war, but the Ark of God was carried by the dirty hands of Eli's sons, the evil hands of Eli's sons. And therefore, the people thought they could do it on their own, even though they just brought an idol. The misuse of something that is holy with dirty hands is not appropriate. And so Samuel understood this. And so when you read chapter 4 of 1 Samuel, I encourage you to do this. You understand that chapter 7 is the reprisal, is the inversion of chapter 4. Chapter 4 is the defeat of Israel. Chapter 7 is the overcoming of Israel. Chapter 4 is Israel trying to do it themselves and them crying out. And chapter 7 is God crying out and thundering. And Samuel says this. Now, this is a people of Israel that says that they were in a state of lament. They were mourning after the Lord. They were desiring him. They were wanting to have him, to possess him, to have this relationship with him. But it seems that there was something missing there. And Samuel gathers all of Israel to himself, all the house of Israel to himself, and says, if you're returning to the Lord with all your heart. Now, he puts this condition in place, that the idea that you have to return to the Lord with all your heart, that you have some options. Like there's some optionality in that it's possible for you to return to the Lord with just your word, just your mental assent, but not actually really return to the Lord. And that you could do it with part of your heart, not wholeheartedly. And what he's saying is, if you do this, if you return to the Lord, you need to do it with your whole heart. And so this is a way of our thinking that we must pursue our projects with passion, and we must pursue our purpose and that which we will become the purpose. Samuel said that you have to return to the Lord. Now, the idea of returning is not just a mere modification, a 1 or 2 degree turn. It's not even a 45-degree turn. It is a about face. It was the great C.S. Lewis who told us that the ability for us to return, to repent, is predicated on us knowing that we're going in the wrong direction. And of course, the man who's going in the wrong direction, the one that is walking away from home and has been traveling far away from home, in order for him to return home, he must do the about face, because the about face, the complete 180-degree turn and going back and re-traveling the road you've traveled, that is the shortest way home. So this is something like what Samuel is telling the nation of Israel. You must return to the Lord, but you must do it with all of your heart. The idea of heart in the Jewish thought system, especially at this time, was not just the emotions, it was not just the feelings, it was not just the passions, it was the whole self. It was the entirety of oneself, the mental capacity, the physical capacity, the aspirational capacity, the resources that you had, and the emotions and your soul and your spirit and everything bundled up. You got to throw it all out there on the table, and that includes your resources. So this is something which Samuel is explicit about at the outset, that if you're going to get to your purpose, you must first return to the Lord with all your heart. The second major group of things that Samuel says, that if you were going to return to the Lord, you're going to do this with all your heart, you have to put away the foreign gods and the Asheroth from among you, and then direct your heart to the Lord. You must put away the foreign gods and the Asheroth from among you and direct your heart to the Lord. Now, this tells us a little bit about the society. The Asheroth were reflections, were images of one of the fertility gods, who was the wife of Bel. The ability for Baal and Asheroth to cause success, to cause fertility, not only inside the woman, but also in the ground, and everything that she touched was essentially nonsensical, but they still carry those around with them. And notice what Samuel says. He says, the Asheroth from among you, that these are Asheroth, these are idols, these are things of passion, of pursuit, of desire, not that they're in our homes, but they're among us. They're between people. They're between me and my neighbor and their neighbor and their neighbor and their family and their friends. It's among all of us. It is a destruction of the relationship among us that's driven by passions and desires. We've got to get rid of that. That's what Samuel's saying. And it says that people threw out the Asheroth and the Baals. Baal and Asheroth are always a pair. And Baal, of course, is representative of the fourth generation of God, right? You've got it traditionally in the Phoenician and the Roman and Greek thought system. You have the main God, the original God, El, the most high God, whose son Uranus overthrew him to become the new God, whose son of Uranus, Kronos, overthrew Uranus to ascend to the throne himself. And finally, the son of Kronos, Baal, who's representative of Zeus, ascended to the throne after Kronos, who of course is indicative of time itself. It's always the newer gods overthrowing the older gods, the newer gods displacing the older gods. And this is a reflection of us. You see, the people of Israel worship Baal because they saw a little bit of themselves in it. They may be like God, that they may be the up-and-coming newer gods that then overthrows the older gods, the wiser gods, the original gods. And this is something that did not please Samuel, definitely didn't please the Jewish God, Yahweh. This is also a little parallel with what you hear in the Garden of Eden, where Satan approaches and says, take of the fruit. And Eve says, well, I was told not to eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because if I did that, I would die. And Satan comes to her in the form of a snake and says, yo, you will not die. Look at me, I know everything. He said that the reason God doesn't want you to eat the fruit is because if you do that, your eyes will be open, you will be able to discern good from evil, and you will be like God. And there we find itself at the very crux of human history, the desire of mankind to be like God, to set up of their own, to rebel, to overcome, to be the Baal that overthrows Kronos, the Zeus that overthrows Kronos, who overthrew Uranus before man, overthrew El, Most High God. before that. We find this at play because it's the desire, the deep-seated evil desire of every man and woman who's not properly functioning within the context of reality. And so we find this at play in Samuel. You have to cast out the Asheroth and the Baal. And of course, after Samuel says that you have to put away the Asheroth from among you, you have to get rid of the problems that you have from among you, he says that in parallel to that, you must also put away the foreign gods. This is implicit, not only the gods of the foreigners, but also those of the household gods, the gods that are hidden, the things that are hidden in the satchel, like Rachel hid him in the satchel. Things that you stole from previous generations from around you, just like Rachel did this. And he's also saying something here about Jacob and his responsibility for the actions of his wife Rachel. Even though he did not know probably that she stole the household gods, that you're responsible for what your family does to the next generation and the next generation. And there's a little bit of this pent up in the idea of the second Jewish commandment that you should not make a graven image of anything on earth or in heaven or in the waters, because God says, I am a jealous God, visiting iniquity on the third and fourth generation of the man who's cursed, who does this. But if a man loves me, does not make a graven image, does not worship that image, I will give blessing to 1,000 generations that they may live. That there's something multi-generational about idol worship and foreign gods. And this is one of the reasons why Samuel's saying you gotta put these things away. Is one of the reasons why Jacob just instinctively knew how reality worked, that he must bury the gods, bury the idols at Shechem before he was able to ascend to find his purposes, meaning be renamed into Israel himself. And so Samuel states this. One side point, think about foreign gods, think about what the God is. Let's take the words of Baptiste again. Let's reason through this. This is a great exercise to do, that if you become something, you have to become something for a reason, and that you become what you worship. Now, what do you worship? It's not whether you worship something, it's what do you worship. Everyone worships something, and what you worship is your attention, that to which you give your attention. You worship that to which you give your attention. And your attention, which is the only resource that you have, the only resource that's obtainable, is something that you show me your attention, I will show you what you become. And Epictetus and Samuel are basically saying the exact same thing. You've got to put away these foreign gods. And what are you giving your attention to? Like your screen time on your app. Spending 5 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours, 15 hours a day staring at a screen when there's real life human beings among you. That screen that was manufactured either in China or Korea, at one of the two places, you become that which you worship. You're becoming a dumb idol. And this is a call of Samuel to the people of Israel to prevent that. And Samuel's next dictate that if you're able to find your purpose, you must turn your heart to the Lord. There's an interesting principle here that you have to dig into other places within the Jewish writings and have to go into the things that other Jewish prophets said, and definitely the senior prophet among them was Christ himself, who said in Luke 12:34, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. It's this idea of the cohabitation of the heart and the treasure. They are always in the same place. But notice what's not said. It's not said that if you love something, your treasure will follow it. No, it says that where your treasure is, there your heart will be also, that the heart follows the treasure. And into that principle, you find the meaning of what it means to direct your heart to the Lord. In the words of Samuel, you have to put your treasure where you want your heart to be. You have to invest where you want your heart to be, because that's the only way to direct the heart. That you might have an indwelling of the Holy Spirit or a purpose or a love or a passion for someone or something, but your treasure will follow that. Are you saving all your money, you're paying down your debt, but you're not giving anything away? That's a problem, because your treasure is with yourself, your heart is with yourself, and that's how you die. That's how you die before you die, is because you focus on yourself, and that's where pride comes from. That's where arrogance comes from. That's where self-worship comes from. That's where the phrase of Satan to Eve in the garden, the original sin, you shall be like God, is derived. You're setting up on your own, you're being like God. You're the determinant of your own hierarchy, and you're a rebel against reality himself. This is what Samuel's saying here. You must direct your own heart. And finally, after you do all these things, all the if, the thens, the ands, Samuel's saying, you do all these things and you return, that he tells the Israelites that God will deliver you out of the hands of the Philistines. The question here now is, well, Rick, we're not in the hands of the Philistines. We're not in an occupied territory right now. what does this imply for us? You have to remember what the Philistines meant. They resemble in this story. You see, when Israel finally makes it to the place of their purpose, the place where they might gather and worship, the Philistines invade. They're on the hunt. They come and they attack. So the Philistines are representative of that, which not only enslaves, that attacks the purpose of the people of Israel. What is it that attacks your purpose? What is it that attacks and prevents you from fulfilling your ultimate need and desire to become? What is it that prevents you, as the Puritans talked about, to worship? The chief aim of man is to glorify God, to image God, and to enjoy Him forever. What's stopping you from enjoying God, imaging God, from being the dominion and the ruler, the person that's able to control themselves and control reality around them through submission to someone higher than themselves? What's preventing you? That is your Philistine. This is what Samuel's saying, that if you do all these things, if you return, you direct your heart, you give your heart, you get away of the idols from yourself, you banish the idols, you banish the gods, you do all these things, then the Lord will remove you out of the hand of the Philistines. Now, one of the interesting things here is that if you're going to be removed out of someone's hand, that means you're in someone's hand. That means you're the slave of someone. You cannot be removed out of the hand of someone unless you're first the slave and within their power. So God here is promised not only to help them escape that which will prevent them from worshiping, becoming, and fulfilling their very purpose, but He will give them freedom. So all of a sudden you've got a triple parallel here of the Israelites escaping out of Egypt to obtain their freedom. Why did Moses say that the Israelites need to leave Egypt when he talked to Pharaoh? Was so they may go into the desert to worship, to become that which they were created to be, to find their very purpose. And they came out with gold. They came out with purpose. They came out into a desert, a wilderness of wandering. But through that, God defeated their very enemies, those people, the Egyptians, who prevented them from worshiping. Jacob, likewise, flees Laban, his father-in-law, who enslaved him, who deceived him, to go out to find his purpose, to find his life, to build a life. But he realized he must sacrifice the golden household gods and the earrings in order to ascend to his place of freedom, his place of becoming, his place of purpose. And so to here, the Israelites must do these things in order to escape those who would prevent them from actually being free and those who prevent them from actually worshiping the Philistines. And finally, Samuel's last command is to gather, that he might offer atonement and a sacrifice and pray on their behalf to God. They might find their purpose and return and overcome their enemies. And you'll see this at play in the hands of Gideon, the historical story of Gideon, historical stories of Israel and their fights and their wars over and over and over again, that God helps them win the battle, but then they themselves must pursue their enemies further and further and defend them and cut them off. And there's a principle here that even though you may have a higher resource that helps you win battles, for me, it's I've got a mom that prays for me, and I would probably have nothing without my mom who prays for me. But it's my responsibility to finish the job, to finish off that which will prevent me from becoming the purpose and fulfilling the identity in which I was created to be. It's up to me, just like it was up to the Israelites to finish off the Philistines all the way up to the place that eventually became Ebenezer, where it says, just like Jacob and Laban put up a stone, a memorial, a watchpost, so too Samuel put up a stone, a watchpost, an Ebenezer stone that said, up until now, God has protected us, God has defended us, God has been with us up until this place, not only time, but also geographical. So the action item here for you is to cast aside the idols, cast aside that which you give your attention to. And only by doing that can you fulfill your very purpose. Can you get into the place where you're able to hear from God, hear from the great thinkers, hear from the trivium of the great books, and be able to ascend to that which you were created, that's which you are named, and that which you in the end will become. But in order to do that, you must sacrifice all, not only what you are, but the potential of what you might become. And in doing so, you and I will fulfill our very destiny of becoming.